Episode 33 of the Star Wars Newsnet's timeline show starts now. Okay, all right, here we go. Luke, my good friend Luke, my name is Tyler, by the way, but my good friend Luke is here. We're ready to talk the next phase of the timeline show, which is still in the same phase that we've been in, but 232 BBY. This week we are talking about the Edge of Balance manga, Volume 1, and I am looking forward to this one from Shima Shinya and Justina Ireland, the artist from Mizuki Sakibara. I tried my best. I am doing my best on these names. I'm not good with names in general. You ask my students on the first 3 weeks of school, I don't even remember their names until week 3. It takes me forever. I could see a face, I got it down, but names are always difficult. But Luke, the timeline show continues on, and these come out Saturday mornings, so naturally we're recording this Saturday afternoon, and I'm just going to say it's because we got too excited about the release date for Andor being announced today, and, I guess that it's unfortunate for Lucasfilm that the Andor Season 2 announcement date is going to be overshadowed by an afternoon timeline pod being uploaded.
It's sad, but hey, the massive weight of talent that we have to bear is just not easy, and it's up to someone, and it's got to be us. So hey,
there are more of us. There are more
of us.
So I, did a crash read of Edge of Balance literally Thursday night. I just stayed up to 1 a.m. Just went ahead and went through the whole manga. So I'm going to attempt to do our usual quick summary, and then we can discuss a couple things. And then like I usually like to do, I pulled out a couple of my favorite spreads or a couple of favorite quotes, a couple of favorite things to read and do one of our readings. So here we go. The great disaster has happened. We have Stellan Gios being involved early in the first page, the first spreads. You see Stellan there on Takla, and so basically the civilians from this planet that was affected by the great disaster and some of the emergencies that happened, they are being relocated to the planet of Banshee, or is it Banki? I think it's Banshee though, right?
I say Banshee in my head.
Okay.
I'm sure no one's going to be offended.
Bankai. No, so Banshee, we have Banshee here, and Banshee is uninhabited pretty much. There's not a lot going on there, but we have the Jedi Temple being set up on Banshee, just a new group of settlers, and these refugees are coming in, and it's okay, maybe life is going to continue on. Life is going to persist. We're going to be okay. We are introduced to Jedi Lily and Master Arkov, who is a Wookiee, by the way. So it's interesting here having their dynamic. Lily is our main Jedi, but having the main dynamic be between her and a Wookiee Jedi Master at times was pretty interesting. And I always think it's interesting how they try to do that in the novels, but in a comic, it made it even more interesting. Anyway, so they're talking. And he is imparting a lot of lessons to Lily about essentially, how she has to have patience, have a new perspective that she can pass on to her Padawan, but also to help her get to the next phase in her journey with the Force. They get these settlers moved in, but immediately we realize that there are problems going on because we know that the Nile have kind of spread the Dringir around the galaxy here, and a Dringir threat pops up on Banshee, and Lily and her Padawan Kieran, along with younglings Vivnia and Nima, are having to work together to stop the Dringir threat. And for those of you who are somehow still unfamiliar with the Dringir and listening to this, they are sentient plants that are poisonous, that can regenerate at a crazy rate, and they are wreaking havoc. And there's some really cool Force stuff that goes on in there, which we'll talk about. But there's also a situation where the Dringir threat and something is going on where the people are being turned literally to wood, actual wood, like a tree. They're being turned into wood, and they don't really know what's happening. They never solve that mystery throughout the book. they're able to stop the Dringear threat for the most part here at the end of this. And we learn at the end of towards the end of the Edge Balance manga, they come in and we have Stellan Geos who comes in and he imparts some wisdom. And at this point in time, we have not really been introduced to Stellan very much in the timeline. We are going a little bit out of order in terms of, for the timeline show, just due to availability of some of the stories for us at the time. And Stellan's a big part here as we get into the rest of phase 1 of the High Republic. Like he is, in a lot of regards, he might be the face of the Jedi at this point. And so him being in this manga is a big deal. And so he is imparting some wisdom, but he's also letting them know that, in other parts we've defeated the Dringear and that seems to stop the threat for now. He's also saying that the Nihil are maybe a little bit larger than they anticipated due to an attack on the Republic Fair of Valo, which we'll be talking about a lot in the upcoming issues. And then we realize, the Nihil threat maybe is a little bit larger than we think, because there is a Mr. Zeret, one of the supposed refugees that they have been bringing over. He is actually a Nihil undercover that is, I would assume, behind a lot of the nefarious schemes and nefarious things that are happening on Banshee. So Lily, with her Padawan Kieran, who is kind of a boisterous Padawan, they're going to have to work together to ultimately stop this threat in the upcoming issues and volumes of this manga. But we basically have a story where we take on the Dringear, we fight the Dringear, we defeat the Dringear, and we're having to figure out why are the people being turned to wood. We never really figured that out. And Zeret apparently is behind a lot of this. He needs to talk to the Eye, which is Marky and Rowe, to get things going. And that's essentially what we got here. Did I miss anything?
I
think that was my worst breakdown so far.
Well, I can defend you. Edge of Balance, I think once we get the final edition of Edge of Balance, it will be like a full story. This is only volume 1 of volume 2. There are actually 2 volumes in phase 1 of the High Republic. So there is a second half of this story that does take place. I know there's a lot of questions we have from this volume that get answered, in the next one we'll cover. But right now, for this episode that we're going to be talking about, there's more questions than answers. So it is hard to kind of cover this story and feel like you've done a complete job, because it is only half of the story that it's telling in phase 1. So I mean, that's kind of at play here, but it is a fun story. I mean, I as well just started it and finished this manga today. I started it at 1 o'clock and finished it I started at 2, finished it at 3.
Okay.
It took me an hour to get through, but it's fun. They're good. They're lighter. They're not super heavy. But they're just fun times.
What do you think about, we're introduced to Lily, and Lily's whole thing is that she's really struggling with perspective a lot of times. She's trying to figure out, how much do I feel for the people that I'm around? How much do I take on their burdens of their agony, their pain, while also, playing the role of Jedi, which is the Jedi are called to be really big empathizers. They're called to shoulder some of those burdens to help alleviate, the concern, the worry of others. And I have to say that, that makes a lot of sense, that there are Jedi that struggle with that boundary. And I think a lot of people in their everyday lives that are very naturally caring towards other people, some people naturally take on too much of what others are feeling, and they have to give themselves space to exist without having to feel like they have to carry everything on their own shoulders. And it seems like Lily is in a situation, but that has to be heightened by 10 because she's force sensitive.
I would think so too. And I can definitely relate with Lily. It's hard to find that, maybe I should say, edge of balance between helping others and feeling that, burden that they're going through. So you want to be a shoulder to lean on, but you can't take on too much, or else you're going to suffer yourself and you will no longer be a safe space to lean on. So it is, I can relate with that struggle. I think I've struggled with that myself. So I liked the character of Lily. I liked the introduction we have to her, and her struggling with perspective, her struggling also with kind of rules and the fluidity that you should have, or the rigidness that you can have with rules. I think that's starting to be
That's
at
good.
play here, where it's more of
I like
about
that.
perspective in volume one, but she also has this underlying thing where she's adhering maybe too much to the dogmatic rules of the Jedi. It's what she
Right.
leans on. It keeps her grounded, but sometimes it can hinder her when she needs quick thinking on her
Mhm.
feet and all she has are hard set rules.
So she's struggling with this perspective. And so I pulled up, I like to pull up like a part of the book that I feel like speaks to what the heart of the story is in a lot of ways. And I think this was one that stuck out to me, or at least is thought provoking. So Karen says, "Are you hesitant to change yourself, Master?" And she says, "No, change comes naturally. But sometimes I wonder if something unpredictable happens, will I be able to handle it?" Kieran says, "Even as a knight, you still question yourself that much?" Kieran, "If you're so confident that you can no longer reflect on yourself, it will lead to arrogance. And that arrogance will inevitably lead to mistakes." And I think that's kind of the heart of this is Lily is learning to live with the fact that, she's going to make mistakes at times, but it's more about I need to learn that I have to be okay with that. I have to be able to question my beliefs sometimes because that's going to help me grow when there are mistakes that are made. It's going to help me grow when I am unsure of how to deal with the situation. And I think that's a great lesson for a teacher to remember and impart to their student as well. They're like, just because you pass this course, just because you pass the trials someday, doesn't mean that you're going to stop your learning in the force. Doesn't mean you're going to stop growing as a person.
Yeah, this specific exchange that these two characters had was maybe the one that hit me the most out of this entire manga.
Mm,
And I just really relate to this because I'm a proponent that your entire life here on Earth, you're going to be continually learning. I don't think you'll ever
right.
know everything. And so I kind of try to, have that in my own life. Like
You will
I'm
try.
I'm trying not to ever act like or think that I know everything about any subject. So
Mhm,
it really hit that, like, he's saying, well, shouldn't you, like, you're a knight, shouldn't you be like fully confident, never question anything
mhm,
anymore? And she's like, well, that's actually a bad thing if you were to do that. So
mhm.
keep your morals, keep your head straight. Like, I
Keep
liked it.
your head on straight, please. So I love it every time we see a character interact with the Dringear for the first time. Like there's something funny about it, or just there when they slice them in half and they start growing back, or when the Dringear's first words inevitably is just screaming the word meat in like
Meat.
all caps with the exclamation points at the end. Like imagine what that's like. You're just chilling on Banshee, growing your crops, trying to help the civilians, and then you just have a screaming tree bush thing walk by you that just starts screaming meat at you and then firing off its poisonous little vines on you. Like that's just got to be the freakiest thing.
And, you know, you don't even know anything about them at that point, but even the more you interact with them and the more you learn, you kind of get to this point where it's like, I don't think we can beat these because we have lightsabers. We can slice them
Right.
up all we can, but like they're regrowing, they're regenerating. You split one in half, it
Mhm.
becomes two Drengir now. What the heck do I do? So
Yeah,
it
the
takes
freaking
extremely
Dringears
creative
thing.
problem solving to beat these things.
Mhm. So I think that Kieran is a character I want to keep my eye on just because he's very intense. He's very passionate
Yeah.
as well, which we see a lot with like that's kind of a normal like young like a Padawan trope is you get the boisterous like intense Padawan that mellows out a little bit. Unless your name's Anakin, then that just kind of doesn't happen. But for the most part, it does. And so I'm excited to see like how his and Lily's relationship grows. But these younglings are curious too. I mean, they're just thrown into the fire in a lot of situations here, and they kind of come out on. I don't want to say like on top, but they come out looking, pretty good. But I have to ask you this: I haven't read the other Edge of Balance mangas yet. So like when it comes to these, I'm going in one at a time. Like I had read this one before and then I was just refreshing, but I hadn't gotten into the rest. It just kind of
Okay, okay.
it's really hard to let things, it's hard to do all of it at once.
Yeah.
This is
Oh,
part of
yes.
why I like the timeline show. It just forces me to make sure I am up to date on all my canon. And so I'm curious, I have no idea what to expect with the whole being turned to wood sort of thing. Like, I don't even know because I don't recall that ever being a factor in other High Republic stories. So I'm wondering how it's specific to this story and how it doesn't get to be like a bigger issue, because it's not like the blight in phase 3. Or I guess we can't talk about that, but like it's not like the, the, what do you call them? The nameless creatures, that ultimately starts, popping up all over the place. It's not like the nameless are just in a comic and they aren't in that novel. You know what I mean? Or it's not like the Path of the Open Hand is only in the novels and not part of the comics either. Like it all interweaves, but I don't remember like this specific plot line being in other phase 1 stories like prominently.
I don't think it is.
So I'm curious to see how it like all plays out.
Yeah, I do think this is a very specific problem to this specific story in the High Republic. So, yeah, you're correct. This has not popped up anywhere.
Which is nice. I feel like which is exciting too, because
yes,
like I'm going to see something new, and it's nice when things don't have to intercede.
Yeah, exactly.
What did you think of the Angry Birds in the bonus chapter of the Bansheans at the end? And it literally just says they're like, there's one line where it just there's this they're like angry, and I'm like, they're little birds. It says they're angry. You cannot tell me that Justina Ireland wasn't thinking of literally thinking of Angry Birds when she did this. Come on.
And the illustrator must have had a pretty good tip off. Like, look at Angry Birds, this game on my phone. Like, they look exactly straight out of your mobile app. Angry Birds.
They look like you're about to catapult them off into something.
I love the Bansheans because they are completely sentient, like real beings with their own language. They can communicate. They can even understand written language, and yet they're just like kind of primitive, kind of small. They have a really cool perspective on the world, their own world, Banshee, that nothing is able to be owned. Everything is for, everyone's use. You share everything. So it's a really just interesting flip on Western society.
It was just a fun, like, little bonus chapter too. You get done with the Dringier threat and all this, and then you have
palate cleanser.
Just a fun chapter, like where you get just to hang out. They get exploring the forest, and then boom, you find the civilization of sentient beings that you've sensed their presence for a while. Like, you've sensed them out there, and now you get thrusted to them, and it's, oh, they're just a bunch of birds with sticks.
And it's not spoiling anything, but I do think they will become a little bit more important as the story goes on in Volume 2.
Are they going to catapult them into Nile forces and get you start keeping track of how many they take out when they just start launching them? All right, we have 5 birds to launch. We have to be strategic in how we launch them and how powerful.
And using the force to manipulate them in the air. Just, yeah. Be insane. The Bansheans are cute.
They power up as they they take out more Nile as well. Like, we have exploding Bansheans as well.
And what they've done is they've taken a bunch of forks and bowls and cups from the refugees and settlers, and they've used them as their own like hats and houses. And so that's just kind of like the fun piece of the story is like, all these settlers were missing all their stuff, minor things. They're not taking like crucial things to life, but like, my fork's missing. Oh, it's the Angry Birds have it actually. So
they're using it to dig up like a new nest or something.
So that's kind of how that ends, is they have this agreement that they will have like a mutual space where the humans will bring stuff to share. The Bansheans will take it, use it, bring it back. It's kind of a trade system they got actually going on.
Right.
So cool end to the Bansheans.
It's a good story. Last thing before we get out of here, because this is a short one today, just with the Edge of Balance manga. Obviously, Xerath is a part of this community. They trust him. They have built relationships with him. And I'm curious, what do you think? And I've experienced betrayal. I think we've all experienced betrayal in our lives. We've experienced some of that. So I'm curious to see how this plays out, because eventually they're going to find out he's part of the Nile, and that's going to happen. I'm really wondering, though, like, how for a manga like this that's interweaving a lot of different themes and like very different, like a lot of ages of the characters. So, you're going to have kids that are reading this. You're going to have adults that are reading this. How much are they going to focus in on like a betrayal, like arc? How personal is it going to get in the end? Like, that's what I'm really curious about. Is this going to be like kind of a deeply personal betrayal, or is it going to feel more like, oh, they just find out Xerath and they got to get him? I
feel like what we're set up with in Volume 1 is that nobody has a super deep relationship with Mr. Zaret right
Hmm.
now. He's a friend. He's just a community member, but oh, it's just so scummy to see someone who's like
Yeah.
in with these refugees who have had everything taken from them from Takla. Their
Yes.
home has been destroyed, and here he is ruining their second chance at life. Like, dude, you're scum. You're villainy. You are a wretched hive of scum and villainy. Obi-Wan would hate you.
Hmm.
But yeah, I do think you have to kind of temper it, like as an author, because like you have Vivnia and Nima who are in here, and they're kids. So like I don't know, you have to be careful with like how you portray their
Hmm.
emotions and what they're
Yeah.
going to feel and stuff. So yeah,
Absolutely. No, I'm excited. We're gonna have a good time exploring the other stories here of the High Republic. So next time we'll be doing some comics. I believe we're gonna be in the world of comics next week. So stay tuned for us talking about the first few issues of some of the Phase One comics from the High Republic, which every Saturday you can join Luke and I for a nice little fun discussion on the next edition, next piece of canon material on the Star Wars timeline. This week, of course, we had Edge of Balance by Justine Ireland and Shima Shinya. 232 BBY. Look at that cover, which with the green lightsabers,
looks
like
great.
swords, it just looks fantastic. Great cover. Love the artwork in this manga as well. And as the resident sponsor of the Luminary Middle School Anime Club, we will be reading some mangas and things. They want to have mangas included into our anime club. So I will be stepping into that and encouraging all, I might get a actual physical copy of this one to bring it in instead of just on my phone. So, Luke, as always, you are the man. Appreciate you being on today for our timeline show. Everyone, check out the Monday pod this week. Paul and I are going to do our monthly check-in, and we're going to talk all about Simon Kinberg's trilogy and what this could mean for the future
It's
of
gonna be good.
Star Wars. I am excited for you guys to do that. If I sound a little bit wonky in that, it's because it was literally like midnight when we were recording it, my time, and my voice was just shot, and I was just trying to hold on for dear life. So we'll see what my energy level sounds like at that one, but I feel like we hung in there. We're pretty good. We're pretty good. And then next Thursday, Star Wars Newsnet Live. We are getting so close to Skeleton Crew, so I'm excited to start getting the hype up for that. Obviously, we have an Andor season, to release now, April 22nd. So lots of fun things to be excited for. Until next time, make sure you check us out at Apple, Spotify, at Star Wars Newsnet. Go to StarWarsNewsNet.com for everything Star Wars for light and life, everyone. Remember, everyone, remember out there, we are all the Republic.